How does God speak through art? Through longing. Sometimes art makes you feel longing. Why do we cry? I really believe this. I could be totally wrong. There's no way to prove this. But why do we cry at happy movies? I think it's because we know that that's not the way our life goes. I don't mean it despairingly. We know that it can be. We know that there is goodness. We know there is love and there is beauty. But when we see it play out on a screen and then we see it end and we can sort of buy into the illusion that it never is going to be bad again for them, we know that our life is not like that. We have a longing for our life to be like that. Uninterrupted bliss and joy, but this side of heaven, it ain't going to happen. And we cry. We cry because the hope moves us, but so does the sorrow of our lives. And then they make a sequel. And sequels are Hollywood's way of saying, nobody's ever happy. Vincent van Gogh's longing, most of you know. Most of you, if I asked you what's one thing you know about Vincent van Gogh, most of you would mention that he cut off his ear. First of all, he only cut off part of the earlobe. He wasn't as crazy as you thought. He didn't cut off the whole ear. But what happened to Vincent van Gogh is that his longing reached such a pitch, and his inability to express it, his inability to share it, his inability to find someone who loved it with him, and yes, perhaps he had mental issues. Perhaps the wiring in his brain was not completely what it ought to be. But what happens to Vincent van Gogh is he suffers a complete and total breakdown. He ends up in an asylum in France in May 18th of 1889. And he decides while he's in his asylum that his problem is his faith. Tell me this doesn't sound like a man trying to push away the longing. He decides that his madness is that he believes that there is good. He decides his madness is that he sees a spark of God where it doesn't exist. And he decides that if he can just stop believing in God and stop looking for the divine, then he can be happy. Because the longing will disappear. I'm not making this up. This is what he writes to Theo. My faith is my madness, he says. And he begins to resolve that and he begins to function. And he's sitting there in this asylum in France. He's totally decided to dispense with the faith, but he can't quite do it. The longing is still there, no matter how much he tries to shove it away. And he turns and he asks the nurse to open the window, and she opens the window and he looks outside and he sees something which he says renewed his soul and his mind. He looks outside the window and he sees the irises. He sees the lilies. And immediately he decides that he may be mad, it's not his faith. The next thing he does after painting the irises that he saw out the window is he recreates from scratch this picture. Something about those irises resonated with Vincent van Gogh. They spoke to him of the lily of the valley. They spoke to him of Jesus Christ. They spoke to him of God. They resonated. They don't resonate with me. They do now that I know the story. Without the story, they don't resonate. I look at that picture, it doesn't resonate. But for Vincent van Gogh, it resonated. What's resonance? You know what resonance is? It's when you have a sound and it touches, the sound waves actually touch and move other things. Occasionally with the music team, you'll have things tuned so perfectly that if you pluck the guitar string, it'll make the bass string vibrate. That's resonance. I want to show you a picture of resonance, which is really kind of interesting. This is a metal plate. What you're going to see is just a metal plate that they're running vibrations through. We're probably going to need to turn this down. It gets pretty shrill. They're running vibrations through, just sound, through. And they put rice or salt or I don't know what, something on it. And the rice and salt moves according to the resonance of the vibration.